Mrs. O'Dare in a smaller connecting room. In a pillowcase under her bed, my mother kept all the things my father had given her during their courtship, objects I took out secretly sometimes to wonder over. A glass seahorse with pearls for eyes, a porcelain Dutch girl holding a tulip, a pair of linen gloves with a mysterious blue stain on one finger. In the one picture we had of my father, he was standing near a tree, squinting his eyes, his hair ruffled by the wind. The air around him was blasted with daylight, so his face looked milky and blurred, and I stared hard at him, struggling to read his expression. Though I had never known him, I felt as if I knew more about him than I knew about my mother. With him, I associated the area known as Donnelly in the west, straight across on the other side of Ireland, and I could imagine the great mansion in which he'd grown up and where he'd brought my mother to live. But my mother seemed to have come from nowhere. The one story I knew about my mother's life before I was born was how she and my father had met in the West. He had been 30 years old and suffering from heart disease. My mother had been 15. He'd first seen her, standing on Oil Wee Head, facing the noisy Atlantic. He'd just come through a week confined to his bed, having experienced serious palpitations. She had not heard the engine of the car, deafened as she was by the booming surf on the rocks below. Frank Sheehy had the driver stop. He got out and stood a while, watching her push the hair from her eyes in the wind, her rough skirt stirring wildly at her shins. He'd later tell his unmarried sisters, with whom he lived, that when he saw her, he felt his heart steady in his chest and a surge of strength come into his body. Overcome by a desire to take care of her, the world seemed a different place. The sun lit the backs of the waves, and in the depths of him something vital stirred. He had a dream that same night that she came to live in his house, and he took this as a sign from God that he should find her. Every day after that he went along the beaches and headlands looking for her, but a year passed before he saw her, to his surprise, from an upstairs window, driving 3 cows up a rocky road on the outskirts of his property. Careful not to frighten my mother off, my father had his sister Kitty overtake her on the road and invite her to tea. Surprised and a little suspicious, she agreed, and Kitty Sheehy followed her as she returned the cows to the farmer who'd hired her to drive them upfield. When she'd first come into the house, her skin was wind-burned and her feet hard and black, callous. More like hooves than feet, Kitty Sheehy had whispered to her sister Lily. Before tea, Kitty directed my mother to the lavatory to wash her hands. When she did not come back to the dining room, Kitty found her at the other side of the house, having lost her way through the corridors. My father was fascinated. At tea, he stared at her unabashedly with a cocked half-smile on his face. If she expressed interest in any little object on the table, he gave it to her. A porcelain salt shaker shaped like a windmill, a cluster of crystal grapes, a pink and gilt cup with a rose painted in the bowl of it. He offered her everything she touched, no matter that the things belonged to his sisters. Kitty and Lily held their breath tolerantly, seeing how she animated him, but behind the kitchen door they moaned about the smell of her, how her hair must be crawling with bugs. Much to their distress, my father insisted she stay in one of the guest rooms. They agreed so long as she let one of the servants bathe her and give her something clean to wear. My mother'd been horrified about the bath, particularly when the servant washed and pumiced her feet. And then she expressed uneasiness with staying on one of the upper floors, So Mrs. O'Dare, who'd been working for the Sheehys at the time, offered her own room that was behind the kitchen. Right away, my mother took to Mrs. O'Dare. I was the only one among them that treated her kindly. None thought they should be serving her. She hated using the toilet in the lavatory and crept from her room at night to do her water in the cold grass. The servants whispered about her odd ways. A rumour spread among them that she had been living in one of the caves in the sea cliff. A fisherman had reported seeing a dim fire flickering among the rocks each night until the tinker girl met my father. My mother liked Frank Sheehy right away, gazing at him with the same gentle inquisitiveness with which he gazed at her. She was touched by his attention, and though it had never been revealed to her that he was responsible for her invitation to the house, she knew, and her warmth to him increased his affection for her. Soon enough, she realized the advantage he afforded her, that it was his word that was most important in a house full of women and servants. She sidled up to that, and as she grew more comfortable, sneered at the reluctant servants and pushed her weight with them. Once she deliberately spilled a bowl of oatmeal and demanded that a certain haughty kitchen servant clean it up. Frank Sheehy asked questions. Where was her mother, her people? Why was a 15-year-old girl on her own so? She met his inquisitiveness with dismay and silence, and he did not persist, afraid of driving her away. She was not interested in talking much, except to ask about little glimmering objects. They went for walks together in the house, the way most couples go for walks outside. They toured the house, him speaking with a gentle formality, pointing out paintings, statues, decorative novelties. Her eyes shined. She touched his arm. The man's besotted with the creature, the servants whispered. Whatever's wrong with his heart has made its way into his brain. One particularly stormy night, she urinated in the water pitcher in her room, rather than face the rain or the toilet. The servants complained to my aunts, and my aunts approached Frank, wanting to know when she was going to leave. Mrs. O'Dare remembered an argument behind closed doors. She saw my father storm from the room, breathing fast. He stopped as he ascended the stairs and shouted to his sisters, "She's keeping me alive!" In the middle of the night, he had a mild heart attack. The week he was in hospital, my mother kept near Mrs. O'Dare. My aunts went out of their way to be kind to my mother, promising Frank that she'd be there, well-treated and comfortable, when he returned. My father married my mother in a service in the conservatory in Drumcoyne House. She'd been put through a trial by the priest, and had proven she was a Catholic to his satisfaction by reciting the Angelus, the Act of Contrition, and the Hail Mary. He'd asked her, "Who is God the Father?" And she'd answered, "The Maker of heaven and earth." Rumour among the servants was that Frank Sheehy had schooled her, but others cited the fervent Catholicism of many of the tinkers who loitered in the backs of churches on Sundays, earnest for the word of God. My father died the following spring, almost a year after they'd married, and a few weeks before my mother discovered she was pregnant. After his death, Drumcoyne House was a lonely place to my mother. She walked on the beach for hours. A few nights she stayed outside on the windy shore, sallying into the house after dawn, trailing damp sand and weather after her. The brocade and velvet skirts that had been made for her were torn or ruined from walking in the salty tides. And she took things, cups and saucers, figurines. She took a small, very expensive bottle of perfume and a pair of sapphire earrings that belonged to Kitty Sheehy, the older, more nervous of Frank's sisters.